You're live.
Okay, welcome back, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. We're just getting back from a short break. We're continuing our conversation that we've had with the Commissioner of Corrections and also with VSCA, talking about the staffing issues, morale issues, and clarifying some issues that came up last week on Thursday. And we've just finished a long conversation with the Commissioner of Corrections. And I want to offer the same amount of time and consideration to Vermont State employees. And we have Steve Howard with us. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
And introduce yourself for the record, and then it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I am Steve Howard. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont State Employees Association. We represent the frontline staff who work in the Department of Corrections. So first of all, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for the opportunity last week and the opportunity today. This is a very difficult conversation. There's no doubt about it. And there is no way to look at what is happening in our department and not understand how deeply personal these discussions are. You heard me say last week that as employees of the state of Vermont working for the Department of Corrections, we are destroying the lives of our correctional officers, our probation and parole officers. We're destroying their families' lives, and we're doing it all in the name of their dedication to both the mission and the cause and the work that they do to keep our public safe, keep your community safe, and to help rehabilitate folks who have broken the law. And so I want to say that it's personal because of the deep impact that damage had, that only any human being who experiences what these men and women are going through. And I have been through this with really, a lot of this isn't new. I've been doing this for 10 years, as I said before. You cannot witness what is happening in the Department of Corrections and not be deeply moved and not see those people in your mind when you come to this committee. And so I want to say I respect the commissioner's testimony, and I want to say that I appreciate his service and I understand the emotion that's involved. You saw me get a little emotional. Having said that, last week I said that leadership is really about two things: showing up and doing something. I want to just say thank you to the members of this committee who went to Springfield yesterday for showing up. And I want to challenge all of us to do something. And you see the difference when you show up and when you hear directly from people about what they're experiencing. I've been hearing those conversations for 10 years. So it's not just a small sample of people, it's a decade's worth of conversations. The testimony that I brought last week was a wide spectrum from across the state, but I specifically asked people who had a great deal of experience, 20 or 30 years in the Department of Corrections, who have seen it all. Now, I'm on my 5th commissioner as the executive director of VSCA.
I'm on more than 5.
I know, but you can imagine how people who have been there 20 or 30 years. So I will just say it is deeply personal, and it is time to do something. And I think that's really the frustration that you see, the hopelessness that you experience when you talk to our members, because they don't think the Department of Corrections or this administration is willing to do what it takes to fix this problem. And what I said last week in my testimony, and I feel very much like I'm in very similar situation or very similar position that you are all in. I'm here as a representative of a group of people who have sent me here to speak on their behalf. Now, I don't know if you all do polling and surveying in your districts before you come here, but you have a pretty good sense of what your constituents feel. At least you should, or you're not going to be there very long. So when I'm speaking to you, the testimony offered on Friday, the testimony offered today is directly from the people who sent me here to speak on their behalf. And you heard me say last week that we are the exclusive bargaining agent. We are elected to come here to represent the views of the employees. And we are the only entity that has that authority. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to present it to you from that perspective, and to understand that when you hear me sharing my testimony, it is because I have heard from the folks who are on the ground and who have asked me to share what I testify to here. This isn't rocket science. This is just not rocket science. We know the answer to this problem. And Representative Triano hit the nail on the head. This department needs serious investment. An investment in the people on the front lines. And why does it need that investment? Well, because we don't want to put people through what we're putting them through. Vermonters don't want people treated this way. But also because we need them to stick around. We need them to stay 20 or 30 years in this department, because there's no other way to stabilize this department and to reach the level of the standard of practice in the facilities and in the field that you expect, that Vermonters expect, unless we keep them here for a long period of time. Now, that is going to mean that when they come to the bargaining table and they tell you what needs to be done, that you take their proposals seriously and you move heaven and earth to get as far as you can toward what they're asking you to do. Those proposals aren't just to line the pockets of the people who are working for the Department of Corrections. It is to attract more people to the Department of Corrections and to keep more people in the department. I've been in those meetings where they prepared for bargaining. And that is the goal of our members. How do we solve the staffing crisis? Here, Commissioner, here's a list. Here's a list of what needs to be done from the perspective of the people who know it best. The people doing the work, because they know why they're there, they know why they're still there, they know what attracted them to the job, and they know why people are leaving. So when they hear the administration say money doesn't matter, or it doesn't matter as much, they disagree with that from their professional opinion, because they're on the front line. Now, I just want to say also, Representative Bosselin hit the nail on the head. You're out making my job somewhat easier, because what my testimony was last week and what it is today is, yes, there were elections. By the way, it was VSEA's proposal that there be an election about the shifts. Yes, there were votes. Yes, there were surveys. But what they're saying to you now is the plan is not working. It's not working. And they need somebody to step up to fix it, because they're working 16-hour shift. 16-hour shift after 16-hour shift. And I'm going to say that you all know this, and as a recovering politician, I'll say I know this. What charts and graphs tell you doesn't often matter if that's not what people feel. And what people feel is 25% vacancy rate does not feel like success. And therefore, their perspective is there isn't success. 16-hour shift after 16-hour shift, being on call in the field on your days off, and having to go work overnight in a hospital, and then go back to your job as a probation and parole officer, that does not feel like it's working. So the message that I was hoping that you would take from my testimony last week, and I think maybe you did, is that this is not working. And it needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed. Yes, there were surveys. Yes, there were elections. But we're telling you now that it needs to be fixed. I also just want to say that the VSEA is a democratic organization, right? So we are a union. It is not a building on State Street. It is not the staff, with all due respect to my colleague Tom. We are a part of that. The union is built by its members. So when the administration disrespects the union, they are disrespecting the members. They are disrespecting the men and women who built that union, who give of themselves to strengthen their union. And unfortunately, we've been in a position where the union feels disrespected by this administration. And I want to be fair to the commissioner. As I said, this is like my 5th commissioner. And I've had pretty good relationships with commissioners. I've gotten into some battles with them. We've had tough conversations. I've had them hang up on me and refuse to talk to me, but some of my best friends do that. That we all have different roles to play, and I don't know what the commissioner is up against in this administration. I don't know, but I do know the governor's been governor for 6 years. And I know he's responsible for running this department. He was chosen by Vermonters to run this department. And when we have a crisis where you have a massive growth in suicidal ideation, and you have people begging for help, and you hear nothing from the governor, nothing, it is disappointing, discouraging, and it leaves people with a sense of hopelessness, especially when you reach out to him and say, hey, you seem like a nice guy. You said you would help. Can you help? So I do want to be fair that the commissioner maybe isn't responsible for the entire administration, but the governor is. And he needs to step up and step into this situation and treat it like the crisis that it is. When you have people who are thinking about ending their lives because of the work they do, it is a crisis that demands leadership from the top. And we have had zero leadership from that. But I don't mean that as a partisan statement. Because, I can go after Democratic or Republican governors, and I have had my opportunity to do both. But this is a serious crisis that demands that level of attention. I'd also just say that we can't have double standards in this department. We should have them anywhere in state government. You can't have the feeling that there are two worlds, that there's the world of the folks on the front lines who are in the midst of the assault or the suicide attempt or whatever else is happening, and then have the world in the air-conditioned suites in Waterbury seem like they don't care or that they don't know what's happening in their own department. And, just a good example of that. Members of the VSEA stuck their neck out in Newport, the largest facility in the state, said there are serious safety problems here, and the management is the reason that there are serious problems. Stuck their neck out. They've asked for that for that superintendent to be treated just as if she were a CO. They've asked that she be put on temporary leave from duty. They are walking on eggshells today in that facility.
Can I interrupt you there for a minute? Did the staff reach out to you folks? I mean, this just didn't happen overnight up there. This has been building for a while. Did the staff reach out to you folks about what was building? And also I'm going to ask DOC the same question. This just didn't happen overnight. So things have probably been escalating. Did staff reach out to DOC? This is obviously against the superintendent. Did staff reach out to DOC in the interim before this vote of no confidence? So I'm asking VSEA first. Did staff reach out to you folks and say, over time, prior to the vote of no confidence, when this started to happen, did they reach out to you?
So they reached out, they did through their labor management process.
So where did it go from there?
It was shut down by the management. That's one of the reasons why they decided to take this action.
Shut down by the management at the facility?
Yes.
Or at central office?
In the facility.
In the facility.
And the superintendent was chosen by central office.
How long ago did that happen?
This has been going on since the superintendent was appointed.
And how long ago was the superintendent appointed?
I don't remember. 9 months, maybe, is that what she is? So the difference there, the point that I was trying to make is when our members say they need something at the bargaining table or when they meet with you, and I want to give the commissioner credit because he spent a lot of time with our members up there on Friday and they appreciate it. When they tell you that something needs to be done and you don't do it, especially in an environment that is as ripe with tension and problems as that facility, that's a problem. When our members in the probation and parole offices meet with you in May and they hear from you, there's going to be a plan to end these extra responsibilities, and you don't ever produce the plan, that breaks their confidence that there's ever going to be any solution to this problem.
So let me stop you there because I want to complete the question about the Newport facilities. So for the commissioner, did staff come to you folks or did you hear about what was happening in that facility a long time prior to what occurred last week?
Yeah, so I had one staff member reach out to me in the last 9 months to raise concerns about the superintendent there. And in that conversation, we did 2 conversations about that topic, and it focused largely on communication and her, from the staff's perspective, not willing to listen to other perspectives. So that's something we took on board. We took action on that. We got her coach. We did some other work up in Northern to try to address that, but there was no communication from the union to us about this until the day we received the vote of no confidence letter, which I find troubling. Something happens between everything is okay and we have no confidence in the superintendent, and there was one staff member during a 9-month period who raised that with me. You know, I did meet with the labor management committee that Mr. Howard was talking about on Friday, and they shared that they had concerns, but waited to share it to see if the situation improved. I can respect that. I understand why that happened, but I would have hoped that we could have headed this off a little sooner and tried to address some of that. And to be clear, just to clarify one thing, is the labor management committee wasn't shuttered by the management up there. It was occurring monthly. She moved it to quarterly, and we can discuss whether that was a good idea or not a good idea. But it still exists. She has met with them. We have the minutes from those meetings. So I don't know if it's entirely accurate to say that it was shut down and didn't.
I think the point is the members have asked the commissioner to treat her the same way he would treat a correctional officer in this instance, and she is being treated differently. And that is a cultural issue that predates this commissioner. It goes back years. You've heard me talk about screw up, move up. You've heard me talk about other examples of that. When you see that kind, when they honestly have risked their jobs and stuck their neck out and taken a desperate move for a change, and they ask you for something, and the leadership says, well, we'll think about it, but we're really not going to take any action. We'll give you a plan, but we never really show up with a plan. The other thing that I think is really troubling, and what you'll hear from our members in the field, just to give you an example, Leona Watt, who was here, is our legislative chair.
Before we go to the field, because you keep going off on the field here, I want to vet this a little bit in terms of screw up, move up. Don't you also at times represent some of your staff that are going through a court proceeding against the department? Do you also do that?
We represent them in court.
Well, they're members of VSEA, and you're going to be taking care of your members if there's a charge against them, and then it might eventually go to court. I mean, you're going to have to work with your members to protect them.
Well, right.
That's what unions do, regardless of where you are. But are there ever situations where there's been an accusation against a correctional officer or someone that's under VSEA and they win the court case?
The VSEA wins the court case?
Or the person that has the charges against them.
Oh, yeah, frequently. So the difference is what VSEA does, what the union does, is ensure that the management is adhering to what they committed to in the collective bargaining agreement. And we ensure that the process is fair and that the person has the ability to defend themselves. So that does happen. But while they're under investigation, more often than not, they're put on temporary leave from duty, and they can stay out there on temporary leave from duty for years.
We looked at this a number of years ago, and some of that is tied up within the Department of Human Resources on the state level.
Yeah.
Some of it may be depending what the accusation is. Sometimes it's of criminal nature that then gets investigated from state police and law enforcement. So it depends what avenue it's going.
It does sometimes, but the Department of Human Resources, the last time I checked, commissioner is appointed by the governor, and the governor is elected to also run the Department of Human Resources. So it is, that's why I said earlier, Madam Chair, I wanted to be fair to the commissioner and that the governor needed to step up, because sometimes it is the Department of Human Resources. He's responsible for that department too. So
what is VSEA responsible for?
VSEA is responsible for bringing to the process the truth about what our members experience. We are responsible for making sure the contract is negotiated and that it is enforced. And we are obligated to represent our members when accusations are made. And a good example of that, Chittenden, the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility, which we had a whole bill passed about, a whole law firm study about it. The accusations in the article that appeared that kicked that all off, you won't find them to have been, you won't find any actions that could be taken that would assert that those cases played out in the way the press portrayed it, because as you go through the process, you find out the facts on the ground are very different. So in that article particularly, in over a 9-year period, there were 55 allegations against our members. 7 in 9 years were substantiated. And you heard me testify previously and last week that when those allegations were brought forward by a VSEA trained steward to the assistant superintendent and the superintendent, they were ignored. Where did the assistant superintendent and the superintendent end up? Central office. When our members see that, that's called screw up, move up, that destroys their faith in the process.
So we responded to that legislatively 2 ways. One was putting in the monitoring commission, and the other one was putting in the investigative unit. So we took care of that legislatively as a result of those accusations and that report and the report of Downs, Markland. We also put in working with the Criminal Justice Training Council to look at the training of correctional officers, as well as possible certification and decertification.
Yes.
We also put in place cameras, security cameras within the correctional facilities, because there were some blind spots there where accusations could be made from offender to offender, offender to staff, staff to staff. We put in security cameras in those blind spots throughout the system. We also looked at putting in body cameras and those body cameras for correctional officers was also a way to substantiate accusations from anyone. And we did not allow deployment of those body cameras until there was policy put in place. So we've taken a lot of legislative initiatives to really help our members, help VSEA members, when there's accusations against them, that there is some substantive evidence one way or the other. So we've put in some of those initiatives legislatively. So I'm going to protect the work that this committee has done over the years to protect our state employees. So we have a few more questions here. Wayne and then Trista.
So this superintendent that we're talking about, is this a classified position or is this an exempt position?
The superintendent position is exempt. The person who's in the role has a leave.
Classified. So Was the allegation that was made something that would be actionable in terms of the human resources, in terms of,
Yes.
the complaint?
The commissioner has the power, just as the commissioner would have the power with the correctional officer.
But was the alleged thing
Yes.
that happened something that was
It's a pattern of things. It's
communication?
So the issue
miscommunication is
here-
not something that's going to be.
the issue that I'm raising isn't about the superintendent. Those will be the commissioners doing an investigation. It's an example of the difference of how if somebody on the front lines would be treated and how a manager is treated. Manager is somebody in the front lines would have been immediately put on temporary leave from duty. Our members asked that this manager be put on temporary leave from duty. She's still there. So that's an example of what causes a lot of the problems in this department. So the issues that are raised up there will be addressed, I'm sure, but the difference in the way the management is treated and the way the frontline folks is treated leads to the distrust of the central.
Did HR, because, I mean, me as an employee just can't ask if somebody is,
No, but when 66 out of 68 people do,
yeah, but what
it's a
did
problem.
But did HR look at this and decide that person should go?
I don't know. I don't know what the commissioner's done with HR. I don't really know what that is about. The point that I'm trying to make is that this is an example of the double standard that our members experience.
I know, Troy, but
I need a clarification, but wouldn't that be part of the bargaining contract? The fact that they're put on temporary leave as part of a
If
investigation?
they're a correctional officer in the bargaining unit,
Yeah.
in this case, the superintendent is acting as a manager. So it's not protected by the collective bargaining agreement.
Right, but what I'm saying is when a correction officer is under investigation or put on temporary leave, that's all in the contract. I got it.
It's part of the process, yeah.
Right, and you're asking for conditions of a contract to also be applied to somebody who's not in that contract.
Right, that there not be a double standard.
What's that?
That there not be a double
No,
standard.
but what I'm saying is those protocols are, I understand your request. I certainly do, and the request makes sense, but that temporary leave while being investigated is part of a signed contract, right? They're obligated to do that. They can't decide whether or not they're gonna do it in this instance or that instance. That is not part of the protocol when somebody outside of bargaining unit is being investigated. Unfortunately, should it be? Sure, we can talk about that, but right now, that's not.
They're not obligated to put somebody on temporary leave from duty. There are times when it makes sense for them to do that. With our members, in this case, the point that I'm trying to make is that the members who made this very sincere effort to raise the red flag about what's happening in that facility asked for a manager to be treated in the same manner as a correctional officer.
Right.
They have not received to date. Commissioner could fix that right now if he wanted to. They have not received that same level of they have not received that response.
So I guess my point is I don't think the commissioner could do that right now if he wanted to. That's my point.
He could. He certainly could. And he's done it before. Previous commissioners have done it. This commissioner has done it. In fact, the previous superintendent was put on temporary. So he does have the power to do it. And the point, not to get into the details of that, but the point that I wanted to make is it's an example of the double standard that really drives home the distrust of the management. And it's why, I think folks have been surveyed to death in this department. And I think what you saw in my testimony last week and what I would restate now is that when they are standing there looking at the schedule and they see who's available to work in their facility and they're texting me what they see, and then they hear what central office is testifying to you, they don't have faith in any of the numbers that central office is providing you, even if it's in a survey. Because they see what's on the schedule and they see what you're being told. And they're saying it's different. They're not just saying it to me, they're saying it at VSEA dinners to legislators, they're saying it repeatedly. So there's a lack of confidence in what in survey after survey after survey, because the numbers when it comes to staffing are not, again, what they are experiencing. 25% vacancy rate doesn't feel much different than 30%.
You know, I want to interject, because if you're focusing in on Springfield, at 85 staffing, it's not fully staffed. That facility has never been fully staffed. Fully staffed at that facility is about 110 to 120. It has never been fully staffed, which is part of an issue long-term in that facility. 85 is about average of what you're going to find in that facility.
I think, Madam Chair, what we're saying is the members of the VSEA have presented a long laundry list of ideas that would get to closer to fully staffed at that facility and throughout the facility.
And I want to get to that, because I wanted to get back to what you were saying that during the
If I could just finish
contract.
this one thought, though.
I finish the thought, and we have another question.
And that's why I said perhaps it's above the commissioner's pay grade, that the level of commitment to this department isn't what it needs to be to solve the problem, which leads our members to believe that there's not an interest at that level in solving this problem. So we feel, our members feel, that they have made a good faith effort to put forward a long list of ideas that they believe would attract and retain staff. It includes money, and as you heard me say last week, it includes reform. Reform of the central office and reform of the management practices. I'm gonna raise it again. I know this is a problem. People think it may be symbolic, but when you're a small probation and parole office, for instance, and you are covering hospitals, trying to do your own job, going to court, supervising folks in the community, and you know there are 5 to 7 managers by the commissioner's own admission in central office, trained to work in facilities, trained to work in the field, paid that training funded by the taxpayers, and the commissioner won't assign them to these hot spots that are breaking people's lives down. It is demoralizing, and it sends the message to them that he feels certain people are more valuable than others. And I'm just telling you that that's what they have expressed to me. They're still waiting for the plan when they can go back to being probation officers, and they're not in the hospitals, and they're not constantly on standby. This schedule relies heavily on their doing the work that has been added to them that used to be assigned to the facilities. So it's you can't have a plan that doesn't eliminate that. And you can't have a plan that, as I testified last week and as I'm testifying now, that is still resulting in 16-hour shift after 16-hour shift, even though the numbers tell you something different. That's the experience people have. And that's what they're sending me here to share with you. The plan is not working the way the administration said it was. And that makes them believe that you're not being presented with the information that you need. And I just want to say one last thing, because with all due respect to the new communications director, welcome. It's a difficult job. We're going to make it harder for you to do your job, I promise you. What our members will hear, this is not a personal assessment, because I don't know you. What our members are going to hear from this testimony is, once again, the commissioner thought the solution to the problem in the field and in the facilities was to add another position in central office. That's what they're going to hear. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't add positions every once in a while in central office. I'm just telling you that's how it's going to be experienced.
I didn't follow you there.
So
they get that supposition.
The answer to the problem,
in one sentence, is somehow
the answer to the problem
director?
often not this particular communications director.
But you're saying that that's what you're going to report to your union what the commissioner said?
No, that's what they're going to hear when they have.
What are you going to say to them?
When they hear this testimony?
When they hear the whole 2 hours, or you're
They watch the testimony on their own. They're watching it right now. What they're going to hear is, central office thinks the answer to our problem is what they've always thought the answer was: hire more managers in central office. That's what they're going to hear. So I'm just reporting to you that that is the reality. Whether that's fair or not, I can't say. Whether they need a communications director, I'm not commenting on that. I'm just telling you that it's this predates.
You are commenting on that. I respectfully disagree. You are commenting on that in this implied way, and I don't think you're being straightforward, and I think your testimony is one-sided.
I'm trying to tell you how they're going to perceive it.
Well, how they perceive it, what is your position, sir?
On what?
Your position in the organization.
I'm the executive director.
What do you have anything to do with how they hear this process in that position?
Well, I can't control how they feel.
I didn't ask that. I asked, do you have some control of what they hear?
No, they can watch the entire testimony.
You don't send messaging to your members.
We send message to that. We send them the actual. We send them what is presented to the committee, but most of them are going to watch the testimony themselves directly.
Okay. Well, I'm just confused because the way you're summarizing the testimony is not how I would have summarized it, frankly. And I'd love to hear the VCSE employees watching. I'd love to hear directly. The committee would love to hear, I imagine, how you receive it. I'm not hearing what you're hearing. I'm concerned that the chasm has something to do with your one-sided testimony.
My testimony is based on what the members have sent me.
I don't hear you taking responsibility, sir.
My responsibility is to the members of the VSEA to present what they asked me to present. And that's what I'm saying to you is that you're going, and the reason I want to say it's really no reflection of any one individual is for decades preceding this, at least a decade that I've been involved, what you will hear from members is that the answer is always to add more staff to central office. I can't change that. That's what people will say to me.
Well,
that's what they experience.
What do you reply to them? You say, I was actually in that room and I heard the commissioner and DSC present multiple ideas that they seem to have good faith in trying to ask. I've seen them go down to appropriations today and ask for funding for some of these things that are more than just the communications director. Are you going to inform we will always tell our member that if they said, hey, this is what I heard, sounds kind of lame, would you say, yeah, I heard some other things too?
We would definitely share all the information that we have with them. We allow them to decipher that information how they will. They are the folks, they are the experts in this process. They are the ones who know more about this department than any of us. And they are the ones who will tell us how they experience it. I'm just telling you what they have said to me. And I'm not saying in this case, because I haven't talked to them about this case, but the answer often from the management of this department, and predates this commissioner, is that central office needs more staff, and that does not land well with people in the facilities or in the field.
If I can maybe.
We got more questions here. Troy,
What I'm hearing
then
you say
Wayne.
is that you're predicting the reaction based on how they've reacted in the past. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I'm telling you how they're going to hear it.
You're predicting.
Yes.
Yeah. Based on 10 years of this is how they responded to central office hires in the past.
Right.
Including sort of.
Right. Because they understand what it will take to fix this problem, and they have presented those ideas to the administration, and they have not gotten far enough down the road toward what they believe needs to be done to fix this problem.
Can we see that list of ideas, by the way?
What was
We've
that?
already sent it to you, but I'm happy to send it to you again.
The list of
We can't keep doing this, managing this crisis in 6 month increments. That's just not how, it's not a successful strategy. And it leaves people believing, leaves people with a sense of uncertainty and really it's sort of a destabilizing way to manage the department.
So Wayne, did you have something? And then I've got some questions.
Just a couple of things. You've got a superintendent that's a classified employee that's working in a management position. If you as you say would represent that person, or if the commissioner was to send that person down to and order that person to go and do a CO job, you wouldn't grieve that? That wouldn't be grieved?
We would not represent her in her capacity as the acting superintendent.
But she couldn't grieve that to HR? Maybe you wouldn't represent her, but she'd still have a grievance against the state, wouldn't she? If she was working out of class?
I can't answer off the top of my head whether she'd have a grievance. I'd have to see what the basis of that was, but The issue is not the particulars of the situation in Newport. Those, I think we will, the commissioner's doing an investigation. The point is, our members believe she should be on temporary leave from duty,
And
and she hasn't been put on.
she's been in that position for 9 months. Would you expect her to have maybe solved the whole problem in 9 months?
Well, our members would say that her style is the problem.
So I want to go back to what you've said at the beginning, where there's, the members have put on the table suggestions, thoughts, ideas in terms of how to stabilize the department, how to stabilize the facilities, how to stabilize the staffing issues, and also investing in its people. And those initiatives and proposals and requests, the way it was indicated is dealt with during the negotiations for the contract, when you're negotiating your contract.
And in subsequent negotiations.
And those negotiations are with whom? It's not with the commissioner of corrections.
Well, it is. It's with the Department of Human Resources,
Okay,
Labor Relations, and the Department of Corrections.
which is part of the administration.
Yes.
So it seems like the issue is more, you keep talking about how the administration, being the governor's office, is the place where people are really feeling not heard and not respected from the administration. You're talking to a legislative committee where we don't control the administration. So it seems like the issue needs to be resolved, number one, when you're going to be renegotiating a contract coming this fall. Is that correct? Is the one you're in?
This August.
And I agree, you can't keep going 6 months by 6 months by 6 months. That in itself is unstable. So if the real issue is the administration is not responding, which could be the fifth floor, how do you plan on trying to get their attention? Because you sent something back in October and you said you sent a communication. How did you send that communication to the fifth floor, to the governor? How did you send that?
It was email
Was it an email? Where did the email go?
to the governor's office.
Was it on the regular governor's email or did it go through the secretary of the
So
administration?
the regular communications form that they give you to submit communications to the governor's office.
So why didn't VSEA go through the secretary of administration as you normally would?
Well, we wouldn't necessarily go through the Secretary of Administration on an issue like this when we're trying to correspond.
Or the Department of Human Resource? I mean, aren't those the normal folks that you would normally reach out to?
Not in this case. We would go right to the governor's office. But I would say
Through an email that it's constituent emails that any person could send an email there? Why wouldn't you go more directly to contacts that you have within the fifth floor, within the governor's office, to relay something like that?
well, I would say that we took advantage of the avenue we had to deliver the letter. The administration was aware of the letter because they were contacted by the media, and they said they had received it and that they would respond to it.
So it wasn't in the media before it was in the email?
No, the email was delivered before the media became aware of it.
So I guess I'm just having a really hard time. I mean, we're in this building together, and we have connections with the Secretary of the Administration. We have connections with the folks that surround the governor. You have those connections too. Why not go to them directly? Why do it through an email that is for all Vermonters to email a governor with some of their thoughts and concerns? Why would VSEA do that route if they really need a connection from the governor on
Well,
this?
it wasn't just that route.
Well, you went to the press too.
We went to the press, we went to other folks who we thought would have influence with the governor, who might get the governor to respond. But frankly, Madam Chair, I would say two things. One is, we're in a level of crisis in this department that has been growing over a course of 5 years. Governor's been in office for 6 years. We've been coming to this committee for 5 years and saying the same thing over and over and over again. And we have used every resource we have available to us to try to get the governor to step up his leadership to meet the moment. This is a crisis. And if we had, I mean, this is a crisis that we shouldn't have to do all of this to get his attention.
Well, you're not getting it, so something's not working.
Something's not working, but that I would absolutely agree with that. What's not in our view working is that the governor isn't responding to people who are working 16 hours after 16 hours after 16 hours and who have skyrocketing suicidal thoughts and who have a constant presence away from their families and away from their homes. He's been made aware of it. He has been asked to step up to it, and he has not. And that is disappointing to our members, but it's also, the situation is of such serious nature that it requires him to be on it like he would be any other crisis. If you think it's a crisis, if you think what is happening to our members is a crisis. And I would just say, Madam Chair, respectfully, the role that your committee has is of oversight and to hold the commissioner and the governor's feet to the fire, which often you do. And we would ask you to continue to do that and to do it as aggressively as you can, because the administration needs more oversight.
Do we have some more questions? Tristan?
Steve, you heard me just a few minutes ago hold the commissioner's feet to the fire on the suicidal ideations, correct? Agreed? This is a crisis, as you said. I find your testimony very compelling with regards to the concerns. You've seen me bring it to the commissioner's attention. This being a crisis, I want to ask more of you. I want to ask more. This is culture-wise. We've all worked at organizations that had cultural issues. It comes from the top and it comes from the bottom. People, we've talked about the traumatized level of trauma in the members and the correctional officers. And to heal trauma, you need to step up to the plate. It can be scary to face that, and you have to step up and do it. And that's how culture changes in both directions. And I want to invite you to consider that.
BSEA is willing to do whatever it needs to do, and we've done as much as we possibly could think to do to try to bring change to this department. And we are open to any other suggestions people have, that any role BSEA can play to support our members. What BSEA does and doesn't do is a decision that the members of the BSEA make. And so that, I think, is that will drive our thought process.
I just don't understand if you're in a position of leadership that you don't think you have anything to do with that.
My role is to advise, which I do, and to carry out the directives that the members of the BSEA have given to me, to whether it's in testimony in the legislature or whether it's bargaining in the bargaining process, whatever it is. Our organization is a democratically elected organization. They decide what their staff does and what they say and what they want offered. The testimony that I brought Friday and the testimony that Thursday, I think, the testimony that I bring to the legislature, to this committee, to any committee, is driven by what the members have asked me to testify to. But that is, that's the role that they have asked me to fulfill, and that's what I do.
Okay.
Other questions, Troy?
You know it's coming, so here it comes. I want to proceed it similarly. I don't want you to think that I trust your intention as well. Absolutely, right? And your sincerity matches that of the commissioners. And that's not me saying both sides are. That's not what I'm doing. There's a lot of emotion in the room right now, and I think it's important to acknowledge that, and I think it's sincere emotion. I don't have to spend a lot of time. You were in the room when I asked it first, but give me your perspective on this. Where we are still in the midst of very differing perspectives of where we are, how we've arrived here, and what it's going to take to leave this place. Why do you think that hasn't existed? And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about this chasm, right? This room, right? I'm not really interested in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of point counterpoint testimony.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that, and we're not interested in participating in that. I think our members are tired and frustrated that they have continuously brought forward what is their experience as employees of the state, employees of this department, and they've suggested ways to fix that. And what they get instead are changes that are floated as the solution to those problems that don't come anywhere close to what they on the ground know it will take to solve those problems. And then you add to it a real culture of distrust of the management. And a sense of, I think you may have seen it in the study that was done by UVM, a sense of a complete lack of understanding or appreciation for what it takes to run these facilities and to operate in the field. The word that keeps coming to my mind that I experience more and more as I talk to our members in the department is just hopelessness. Hopelessness, the hope that somebody's going to come fix this is diminishing quickly. And the idea that anybody, I think I shared this anecdote with you last week when I was here. There was an issue with the city of Burlington and the level of law enforcement in the city of Burlington. And concerns about the safety or, I'm not sure what those issues were. But it seemed to be because of a shortage of police officers. Instantly, the administration just deployed state troopers to the city of Burlington, instantly. And the text that I got from this correctional officer was, where are our state troopers? Why won't they send any help to us? And then he said, I know the answer to that. We're behind walls. We're invisible. Now, the commissioner doesn't control that part. That is a decision that is made by the governor and by his staff, I assume, in the governor's office, finance and management, or wherever it might be.
Good one, Eric.
But the feeling is the same. We don't matter. And that's what they'll say to you. So I think that's really an example of, we've been crying out for 5 years that this is a problem. Maybe a month or two of complaints about the level of police protection in Burlington, and boom, there's a huge response. Mobilized response. The governor has a press conference. It's a big deal. This level of crisis in the Department of Corrections is 5 times as large as that problem and has been growing for years. There's no press conference. There's no mention of it. There's no nothing. There's not even a response to a letter. There's nothing. We're invisible. We're forgotten. Nobody cares. That's the feeling that's left behind.
Gina?
It seems to me, Steve, that, I feel where your frustration is coming from, but don't you feel like by not using more senior channels to get that communication to the governor, that this was really kind of a grandstanding strategy for you to get into the media and get some results that way? Because at the end of the day, I mean, the VSEA pays you to get results. Their biggest thing, it sounds like, is pay, and they want that result at the end of the day. And I'm just wondering if you can, speak to that and how that affects
Sure.
the actual effectiveness of getting things resolved and done. Is that an effective way to do it?
I think that's a very valid question, and I feel that we have to often turn to the press, because we have experienced that it's the only thing that the administration.
Well, I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing like the commissioner's really making an effort. I mean, that's part of the reason he brought in the communications guy. Or gal. I'm sorry. I just use guy as a broad.
To give you a baptism by fire.
Sorry. No, I say hey you guys. I don't mean gender specific. Sorry. But it seems like the commissioner is making efforts to expand this, and would it not be wise and prudent of you to tell the people that you're representing that, hey, these are some of the new avenues that you can take to get some results that would really benefit them, rather than grandstanding in the media?
I wouldn't say it was grandstanding in the media, but I would say that the strategy or the decision to reach to the governor was one that our members made. And our members said, we want to go to the governor. We want to know that he knows that this is a problem. We want to hear from him what the solution is. And we want to hear regularly from him on what else can be done to solve this problem. So we have, as I said earlier, exhausted every possible alternative avenue we could think of.
But it doesn't sound like you have.
We have, and the one that seems to actually work with the administration, I don't mean just in the Department of Corrections, I mean across state government, is to get the attention of the press corps, because then we get a response. So if only the only time you get a response from the
then why are you here? If the press corps is effective at getting you a response, you haven't gotten your response yet, so you're here.
Well, because this committee has a role to play in solving the problem. First of all, you should know what's happening in the Department of Corrections, right? Because this is your committee of
Sure,
jurisdiction.
but you're saying that you want a response from the governor's administration, and you didn't get that response by going through the media. So haven't you you're coming here as a secondary route rather than going through?
We've been coming to this committee for.
It seems like what you're saying.
Forever. But we've been coming on this particular issue for at least the last 5 years. I will say that the administration seems to respond when it's in the press. So.
Right, but again, like I said, it hasn't. The administration hasn't responded with it being in the press.
And the issue is, first of all, why haven't they responded?
Maybe it's because you sent it through a general email setting.
They've been contacted in many more ways than that. But even if we did, why is that process that everyday Vermonters use every day, why is that process not valid?
It's not that it's not valid, it just doesn't seem like that puts you in the best position to negotiate on behalf of the people that you're representing if you're going right to the media and creating an adversarial situation with the administration.
We are not creating an adversarial relationship. What's important to make certain is that when you raise concerns with the administration, whether it's the commissioner or the governor or whomever, that what the concerns that you're raising aren't swept under the rug or ignored. The issue should.
Yeah, but they clearly haven't been ignored because the commissioner is, no, I'm not gonna let you finish. The commissioner is clearly saying that he hears all the same issues that you're hearing. I mean, he's testified quite passionately about that today, that he's hearing the exact same things that you're bringing up here.
Right, so what our members are saying is that we believe that it may take the governor's leadership to actually get resolutions to those issues. The issue is, why are we in a position where we have to why is it so difficult to have this discussion? It should not be. And if that's how we experience it, that we cannot get through unless we use every tactic we can think of to try to get a result, and we know this tactic has worked in the past. Why wouldn't we use that? So the letter from our members was a sincere effort on their behalf to ask for 30 minutes of the governor's time to hear from them directly about what is happening so that they can be 100% sure he hears it right from the horse's mouth, and to hear from him as the CEO of the state responsible for the Department of Corrections, what his solution is. And, you know, there often, as I said earlier in my testimony, to be fair to the commissioner, there may be things happening above the commissioner's head that are blocking the solutions to this problem. There's nobody above the governor, except maybe this committee and the legislature, which has at least an equal role to play in oversight. So that's really why we're here, and why our members took the time to write that letter, and why they asked us to send it to the governor. We didn't just send it to the governor, we also followed up and tried to get a response, and we didn't.
How did you follow up?
We contacted people around the governor, we contacted legislators and asked them to call the governor. We did whatever we could to try to get a response from the governor, which we should not have to do.
So your gripe is the governor.
Well, it's not just the governor. It's
And I don't mean your gripe. I mean, you know, your concern and you're voicing that it's the governor, the governor, the governor.
Ultimately, the governor is responsible for the management of this administration, and he's responsible for the management of the department. And so he's also, so he is, it is a serious concern of our members that he has not shown interest in the things that they have expressed to him. There are many other issues that one would not expect the governor to be involved in that concern us, and you've heard me share those with you, that happen in central office or at the commissioner's level, and sometimes it happens, as you saw, we discussed earlier, with superintendents. There are various levels to this, but this is a serious crisis that deserves the governor's attention, and we are doing everything we can as the representatives of the frontline employees to get his attention and get him to step into this leadership role.
So we have some more questions here. John?
What would the union's position be if a bunch of non-union help showed up to do their jobs?
If a bunch of non-union help showed up to do
what you want,
to do whose job? The union's job or the
union's job, which is part of the COs.
Oh, to do the CO's work.
What would be your position or the union's position?
We would encourage, we would be opposed to the privatization of those jobs. And
I don't think he's talking about privatization.
No.
I think you're talking about other state employees who are not unionized.
Correct.
To come in and work, or they're involved in another union?
Correct.
Oh, okay, so other state employees coming in like as temporary employees?
Probably.
So we have actually suggested that to the administration, that.
As long as they were VSCA members?
Well, we've even suggested that in the height of this, that they reach out to retired, we were just talking about this, that they reach out to retired COs and ask them to come back and work as temporary employees. We have suggested, I don't think we've suggested this commissioner, but previous commissioners, that they put out an all hands on deck bulletin to all state government and say, would you be willing to be either trained to be a CO and come help bail this out? Or if you're working in another department and you were a CO and you have received this training, would you come back and work some shifts? We've made those suggestions to the administration. So what we wouldn't want the entire department staff eliminated for non-union staff, but we have suggested that in the height of this crisis, that actions like that be taken to relieve the pressure on our members.
And the contract allows that.
Yes, they can. There are right now in facilities around the state. There are temporary correctional officers working, who mostly were retired corrections officers.
Non-BS.
Yeah, they're not in the bargaining unit. We used to have a problem. I think I said this last week. when I first started, this is how far we've come. When I first started here, Connor probably will remember this from his days at the SCA. The department hired correctional officers first as temporary workers. And then after they worked as temporary workers, then they were hired as correctional officers that go through the 6-month probationary period. And the big concern of our members was we're exploiting those people, and they should be hired right away as full-time classified employees with all the benefits of the contract, with all the protections of a union. That has gone away. There are not the lines of temporary workers that there used to be wanting to work in the Department of Corrections. So that problem cured itself. But in our position was at that time that was not a sound way to run the department. When I say our position, I mean our correctional officers who are elected by their fellow employees to serve on the bargaining team, to serve on the board of trustees of the VSCA, on their council of the VSCA. They're elected by the folks in the facilities in the field to represent their views, and then they tell the staff what they want done, and we do it. It's a democratic operation.
Other questions, thoughts? Anything else, Steve, you want to share?
I think what I would say is, I don't know how to say, I'll just say it this way. We aren't going to make progress without difficult conversations like this. Like, you have difficult conversations because you want to make progress. The VSCA is desperate to make progress on this issue. We have been, as I joke sometimes, doing jumping jacks and backflips to get people in power to take on this challenge and to work with us to solve these problems. But we have not found a partnership yet that feels like a partnership, that moves far enough in the direction of what our members feel needs to be done to actually solve this problem. We're open to any willingness to meet us in that process, but until then, we are going to fight as hard as we can for the health, safety, and the lives of our members who work in this department. They should not be treated this way by their employer. And that is, for us, the bottom line. Thank you very much.
Any other? Great. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, folks. I'm sure this conversation will continue at some point in some way, in some manner. We've got testimonies scheduled from David Sheets for something a little lighter, which is that. Well, no, it's for continued maintenance inside the State House for that. So let's go off of YouTube, take a few minutes to debrief here a little, folks, and